Ahoy there, folks! I'm Captain Benzie, and welcome back to another video for EVE Online. In today's video, we're going to be continuing our little mini-series looking at some of the cheapest C3 ratting ships available in the game. Once again, a humongous thank you and shout out to Naku Esheri for suggesting this particular fit. I've tested it, it works, and oh boy, it's time to take this Minmatar up to the max. All of you know at this point in time, unless this is your first time watching a Captain Benzie video, in which case, hi, welcome aboard, that I am a humongous fan of the Rust machines. In Rust we trust, load hail, never fail. You know all of the lines by now. So we're going to be looking at the Stabber Fleet issue, taking this out ratting in C3 J-Space combat anomalies, and just generally having a really good time with a really cheap ship. Now, I want to jump in before we start with anything else and say this does not require any implants. I've had some feedback from some people saying, hey, this ship's really good and it's better than the one you're showcasing, but it needs all of this additional steps in order to make it work. It's like, sure, your fit may be only 130 million compared to my 150 million, but when you're wearing 100 million ISK worth of implants in order to get it to actually work, that defeats the purpose. I'm running all of these with 0 implants. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, let me know. Hit like, drop a comment down below. If you want to go the extra mile to support me and keep me making content like this, head across to my Patreon page or drop a small donation in my PayPal tip jar. Both really help me out. Finally, if you are relatively new to EVE Online, first of all, you can use my referral link to get 1 million free skill points. It works on existing accounts as well, as long as you've not used a referral link before. And then come join the Catskull Community Discord, linked in the description down below. Quick point on that one. Some people have messaged me recently saying they're really struggling with the Discord. You need to go into the role selection channel and choose which games you want to see. My Discord's fairly extensive. We just want to make sure you're getting the content you want and not the stuff you don't. No one likes those email chains where it's like, hey, here's a bunch of emails you didn't actually sign up for. Same thing with Discord, right? Anyway, all that said and done, verbose little intro out of the way, let's jump right into talking about why the Stabber Fleet issue is an amazingly cheap and really quite powerful C3 ratting ship. So first of all then, let's talk about the Stabber Fleet issue in specific, because I love this ship, I love the Stabber hull. It's not quite as good as the Vagabond, but that's kind of what you expect for a Navy issue rather than a Tech 2. Ultimately, this is a great stepping stone for moving up towards something like the Vagabond, which, in case you're new around here, is absolutely my favorite ship in EVE Online at the moment. That does occasionally shift, but the Vagabond is very core to my preferences in the game. Anyway, so being a fleet issue ship or navy issue ship, it's the same tier, just the Minmatar called them fleet issue. Essentially, you are looking at a ship that can be flown by alpha pilots, whereas the Tech 2s are Omega exclusive. I'll be completely honest, I don't offhand recall the limitations of an alpha account. I don't know how high your skills can go and which modules you can and can't fix. This is based on the fit that I'm going to be running here. I know that this fit works. If you want to try and reduce this down in order to do a more alpha-friendly fit, give it a go. Swap some of the Tech 2 modules for your lower tech alpha-friendly stuff. Give it a go. Let me know in the comment section how it works out for you. In regards to the skills you're going to be needing to train for this, the Stabber Fleet issue only gets bonuses directly from Minmatar Cruiser. And what that's going to give you is a 7.5% bonus to medium projectile turret rate of fire and a 10% medium projectile turret tracking speed. At full Minmatar Cruiser 5, that is a full 37.5% faster firing turrets with a 50% increase to tracking speed. Now, tracking speed, of course, helps your turrets hit smaller, faster ships. On the other hand, it's worth noting that due to how turret mechanics work, they are basically using angular velocity, and angular velocity takes into account the speed and direction of your ship as well as the target. A quick sort of way to think of this I like to use is imagine that you're driving down a freeway or motorway or whatever kind of fast-moving road you have. If you're following another car and you're both going in a straight line with the car in front of you, it's going to be very easy to lean out of the window and shoot at them, right? Because they are not actually moving in regards to your field of vision. They are directly in front of you. Same as if a car is in the lane next to you going in the same direction at the same speed, you're going to be able to hit them really easily because they're not actually moving relative to you. On the other hand, if a car is overtaking you, it does move past you at a speed. It travels across your field of vision. If a car is coming down the other side of the motorway going in the opposite direction, it's easy to hit it when it's at range because it's not really moving in a left or right trajectory. But as it goes past your car windows, it's going much faster and it's going to be significantly more difficult to hit. Right? That's the basics of turret tracking. So your speed and their speed are going to matter. If you're going 60 miles an hour in one direction, they're going 60 miles an hour in the other direction, the point of them passing you is essentially effectively 120 miles per hour in relative velocity, right? So that is why the medium projectile turret speed bonus here is so important on the Stabber fleet issue, because this is a fast-moving cruiser, and you are genuinely at danger with a ship that moves this quickly of moving so fast that you can't actually hit a stationary target because you are moving too quickly. So having a 50% bonus to tracking speed there really helps that out, especially since we're going to be using autocannons in the fit and just having a good time with that. Let's actually look at the fittings, though. We'll talk about how this works. Actually, no, sorry, I've missed a bit on the traits here. Rate of fire. Rate of fire is obviously a straight-up damage increase. We're getting 37.5% at Minmatar 5. Rate of fire increase, that means 37.5% faster firing turrets. It does also come at the understanding that you are going to chew through ammunition significantly faster. Ultimately, rate of fire bonuses and damage bonuses are functionally the same if they are the same amount. A 37.5% increase to rate of fire is going to work out the same DPS increase as a 37.5% increase to damage. The difference is that the rate of fire is also going to use more ammunition, so do bear that in mind and carry lots of spare ammunition with you. Anyway, let's have a look at the fittings. So we've got a good amount of CPU, a good amount of power grid, very, very standard here for a cruiser of this particular tech level. We've only got 5 high slots on this one, which is not quite as powerful as some of the other cruisers out there. All 5 of them, however, can be turret hardpoints. We do also have the capability, strangely enough, to fit missile hardpoints on here as well. I don't honestly understand why you ever would, unless you're going for a very niche fit where you're going so fast that it's actually going to cause your turrets to have issues, and therefore missiles are better for the application, and it doesn't matter that you're sacrificing the fact that this gets bonuses to projectile turrets, not to missiles. It's niche. We're not going to talk about it in this video, but we can fit 5 of those turrets. We then have 4 mid slots and 6 low slots. Now, mid slots, of course, are used for shield tanking, propulsion, cap stability, application, things like Weber fires, target painters, that kind of thing. Whereas low slots are used for either armor tanking or for things like gyrostabilizers and tracking enhancers, those kind of other application and damage-based modules. Now, the Stabber fleet issue has a nice little balance between the two. You could theoretically shield tank it and have more damage application in the bottom rows, or you could go armor tanking and have more cap stability and propulsion. If you're looking at the screen, you've probably already spotted that's what we're going for. 3 medium rig slots gives us a good amount of versatility there. We've got 400 calibration, which is pretty standard for a ship of this type. We'll talk more about the rigs later. Under the attributes, it's worth noting that we do have a 40 cubic meter drone bay with 40 megabits per second of drone bandwidth. This, in short, essentially means you can have a full flight of light drones, should you wish, or you can go for 4 medium drones. You could theoretically fit a heavy drone in there with some light to support, but 4 mediums is probably going to work out more DPS. Drones, not a big thing to worry about. I will say now, before we even hit the fitting section of this video, you can just go for straight up damage drones. You could even go for application-based drones like stasis Weber fire drones or target painter drones, that kind of thing. And if you do go for those, yeah, you're going to want to go for the heavy and light, because the heavy drone works better than the equivalent amount in medium drones, and a medium works better than the equivalent amount in light drones due to how the stacking penalties work. But let's not get into that here. Let's instead have a look at the fit. So this is the fit that we're going to be using. I will try to remember to put this in the description of the video. If not, it'll be somewhere like the pinned comment. If I've forgotten to do so, please just drop me a polite little reminder. I can be very forgetful. I get excited, I upload, I forget to put these things in the fitting, in the actual description of the video. Now, we're looking at a fairly cheap fit here, 149.6 million ISK. I do need to point out that is including the ammunition, the drones, and a mobile tractor unit currently sitting in the hold of this ship as well. So that's kind of 150 million is everything, ammo and MTU. If you've already got an MTU, the ship is nice and cheap. What are we going to be running in order to get this up and going? So let's swap that to armor repair. So the ship itself, we are cap stable, very cap stable. 22.4 gigajoules per second means we are pretty much cap stable against all but the most extreme of the C3 combat sites, like the Arus, the first wave. You do have a whopping 24 gigajoules per second of neutralization going on there if all 4 of the upholders are on you. Fortunately, the second you've killed one of those upholders, you're back to cap stable. In the third wave of a Fortification Frontier stronghold, you do have 18 gigajoules, and we're completely cap stable for that. That's really nice. That's all modules running and not having to worry about ever turning it off. Even in the Arus, by time you are beginning to lose your capacitor, you're going to have killed the first of those upholders, at which point you're now back to being cap stable, so really don't worry about it. You can just kind of set and forget with this one. We've got solid DPS, about 534 there, slightly lower than it should be because I don't have the additional drone fitted in here. Let's actually open up a simulation window, and we are just going to drop another drone in there just because I should have set this up ahead of time. I need to go to hardware and modules. I'm completely screwing this up. Look at Benzi making an absolute moron out of himself here doing all of this, but let's just drop that in and show you what it would be like. There we go. So we're actually looking at about 565.6 DPS. Don't worry if your numbers are not quite the same as mine. I am Mastery 5 in this ship and pretty much everything else at this point. The exact numbers here don't matter. You'll see how well this does sights, and that if you're slightly lower on those skills, you'll still do fine. Just give it a try. It's a cheap ship. What's the worst that can happen, right? High slots then, we're running 425mm AutoCannon IIs, probably one of my favourite high slot modules in the game. They are great fun, running Hail M in there currently, which is what's giving us that maximum DPS of 565. Be aware that you probably want to carry something like Phased Plasma just occasionally to go against some of the smaller ships, especially if you're not at Minmatar Cruiser 5, because the tracking penalty on Hail does hurt a little bit. Also carry some Barrage. Having Barrage means that you can shoot ships that you're a little bit further away from, that maybe are out of the range of Hail. Hail here, for example, you can see optimal range 1.5, fall off to 12 kilometers. That means we're at half DPS at 12 kilometers. That then goes again out to a full, it's not 24, it's going to be 20, because it's adding 10.5 onto that 12. It's going to be 12.5 kilometers, 20.5 kilometers, 22.5 kilometers. Goodness gracious me, my math is falling apart. 22.5 kilometers is going to be your maximum range you can hit something, but you're barely doing any DPS. Swap to Barrage at that kind of distance and you'll be able to actually do some damage to things, which is much better than not doing anything. And sometimes those awakened upholders like to orbit at 30 kilometers. Barrage is your friend, as are your drones. Be aware that that's what the drones are basically going to be there for if you go for the damage version. Our mid slots, we've gone full on propulsion and capacitor stability, or I say we have, Niku has. Again, this fit was suggested by Niku Esheri. Thank you so much for suggesting this. I love that this works. We're running a 10 meganewton monopropellant enduring afterburner. Enduring means it doesn't use as much capacitor as some of the alternatives. You can probably upgrade this comfortably as well if you want to push a little bit of extra flight velocity out of this, because we do have enough capacitor stability to make that worthwhile. Alongside 2 cap recharges, not just something that, you know, a cap recharger is what I refer to as me sort of having an afternoon off and just, you know, relaxing and unwinding with some EVE Online. That's a cap recharger. But these ones specifically are designed to help your capacitor recharge faster in game. Then we have a Thukker large cap battery just to push up the amount of capacitor we have and give us a little bit of resistance to neuting. So actually, when I say that, for example, the third wave of Fortification Frontier Stronghold is doing 18 gigajoules, it's actually doing slightly less because the Thukker large cap battery has resistance to neutralization. Our low slots, we're going full on armor tank down here, 2 medium armor repairer 2s, alongside 2 energized membranes, 1 for kinetic, 1 for explosive, just to push those resistances up. We've got a reactive armor hardener as well here. Don't at me on this one. Reactive armor hardeners are amazing in J-Space because here, sleepers don't do omni damage. They don't. I'm sorry. A lot of people come to me and go, why a reactive armor hardener? Your sleepers do omni damage. No, they don't. They've got 1 weapon that does electromagnetic and thermal, 1 that does kinetic and explosive. Ultimately, we're not going to be taking much damage from the kinetic explosive ones, from the electromagnetic thermal one, because it's a turret and we are fast enough that most of the big battleships are going to be missing us. Therefore, the reactive armor hardener is going to react to the only damage we're taking, which is going to be primarily kinetic and explosive. Pushes those resistances up. It doesn't have the stacking penalties of other low slot resistance modules. It's amazing. Reactive armor hardeners obey, people. Reactive armor hardeners obey. Finally then, a Reactor Control Unit 2 is required in order to have enough power grid to cram all of this in. Wish it weren't the case, but hey, we make great things happen by just pushing up that reactor, that power grid just a little bit further. Be aware, again, you may need to have, in order to make this fully work, having power grid management all the way up to 5, and probably weapons upgrades and advanced weapons upgrades fairly high as well, in order to reduce the amount of power grid that your weapons are using comparatively. Our rigs, we have medium semiconductor memory cell, medium capacitor control circuit for additional capacitor stability, and a medium projectile burst aerator just to push the DPS up a little bit more. That increases our rate of fire. Again, we are going to be chewing ammunition like you wouldn't believe. If you want to conserve ammunition a little bit, you could change that for a collision accelerator rather than a burst aerator, but it's really neither here or there. Cost is minimal difference between them. You're just using a bit more ammunition. But that's the fit. The drones, it's kind of up to you. I alluded to this earlier. You could use application drones, Weberfire drones, and target painter drones. If you do go for the heavy drone, it's a 25 megabits per second on a heavy Weberfying drone, and then a single medium Weberfying drone and a light Weberfying drone. That will give you better than going with 4 mediums or 5 lights or whatever. That's the way you do it with those E-War drones. Otherwise, put in 4 Hobgoblin 2s or 4 Vesper 2s or whatever the heck you fancy for your damage application. Anyway, 150 million ISK. Let's actually showcase this in action. So look, I'm not going to show all of the combat sites for this because it's simply unnecessary. Here I am in Fortification Frontier Stronghold. I've just cleared Wave 2. You can see my capacitor and you can see my armor. Absolutely maxed out. Now what I've done is make sure that I am fairly close to where Wave 3 is going to spawn, because I know that that Sleepless Upholder is coming, and I know that if I'm too far away and thus have low angular velocity against it, it's gonna hurt like a bitch. So I want to be nice and close to it in order to get right up in there and start dealing some damage to it and avoiding most of its incoming fire. Now, in retrospect, I should have gone after the Awakened Preserver first. I have, figured out now that the Awakened Upholder, 6 gigajoules per second of neutralization, and the Sleepless Upholder, 12 gigajoules per second of neutralization, is a total of 18 gigajoules per second, which I would still be cap stable with everything running. I tend to just go for the Awakened Upholder out of habit, I guess, because it's the first, it's nice and easy to kill, and it reduces the amount of neutralization I'm taking. In this case, it doesn't actually matter. I should be going after the Awakened Preserver just so I can kill everything else faster without those remote reps being a thing. That said, you can see the range I'm at. I'm taking very little damage from the battleship because I'm nice and close and keeping up angular momentum against it, and the Awakened Upholder is going down fairly quickly, even though the Preserver is repping it a little bit. Hopefully, boom, there it goes. I'm now going to swap to Hail because we're getting nice and close to that Awakened Preserver. I'm going to start to pop through that one nice and quickly as well. Essentially, the only thing you really need to remember with this fit, as long as you are 18 gigajoules per second cap stability or higher, go for that Preserver first, keep up your angular velocity against the Sleepless Upholder battleship. That is the big bad in this wave. That is what you need to account for. And it's worth noting that, yeah, that Sleepless Upholder has a lot of hit points, and it is going to take a little bit of time for a Stabber Fleet issue with only 500 odd DPS to chunk through that. This is not the greatest ship ever for running C3s. It is, however, extraordinarily cheap. Rather than, say, a 400-500 million ISK Vagabond, which will do this in about 17 minutes, this takes about 23 to 25 minutes to clear for 150 million. Like, you work out what you want to do with that. This ship has paid itself back very, very quickly, whereas the Vagabond, it clears the sites faster, but it actually takes longer to, to pay itself back. And if you're worried about getting jumped or whatever, well, that's a thing. Also, yes, for anyone watching the footage, I forgot to hit orbit. I have actually, really pushed myself way out of this combat site, taking a good amount of damage there from that Sleepless Upholder. Look at my armor tank drop all the way down to nearly 50%. Time to get up some angular velocity, get back in range of that Awakened Preserver, and actually focus on clearing the site, right? I was too busy talking with the guys in voice chat at this point, and kind of lost focus on the site that I was running. Don't do that. That's how you lose ships. That's a really, really bad idea. Anyway, though, hopefully you can see that even with mistakes like that, again, remembering I'm Captain Benzie, I make the mistakes so that you don't have to, I'm taking so little damage from this site that we're clearing it quite comfortably. Even with that big amount of damage in the middle, well, yeah, I'm now coming back into range of that Sleepless Upholder. I'm going to try and pull down that Awakened Defender in like kind of a flyby. Once I'm nice and close to that Sleepless Defender and getting a good orbit around it, I'm going to be taking practically no damage at all. Very easy, runs this site, no problems. Now for the Aru's construct, I've set up a bounce point, a ping if you like, or a perch, whatever you want to call it, off the side of the anomaly. That allows me to warp away if I need to without abandoning the site. And it also means that I can warp straight to one of the towers. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to warp right close to this Awakened Sentry, Wakeful Sentry, lock onto it, get a nice tight orbit of 7 kilometers, and start to shoot those. You'll see I'm about 80 kilometers or so away from each of the Awakened Upholders. So I'm hoping I can do a good amount of damage to this Wakeful Sentry tower before those Upholders get into range. Drop the mobile tractor unit by dragging it out of the items, out of my inventory onto the field, bookmark it, and then we're going to worry about killing this thing. Now you'll see that actually it's missing me completely, but I'm also missing it completely, which is not ideal. This is what I was saying earlier about the fact that the Stabber Fleet issue is a very fast moving cruiser and can actually essentially move so fast that it outtracks itself. The Wakeful Sentry towers may be towers and completely stationary, but they are also very small targets, and the speed that I'm moving, in this case 700 meters per second, is so fast that I'm actually missing that tower. This is why I've changed my ammunition away from Hail, which has a penalty to tracking speed, for, in this case, Phased Plasma, but you could easily use Fusion or EMP because of how the resistances on Sleepers work, and those don't have the tracking speed penalty. Heck, if you're slightly lower skilled, you might even want to bring something like Titanium Sabo that actually gives you a bonus to your tracking speed, just to make sure that you are hitting, because even here, I'm still missing. I could also manually set my speed a little bit slower, or move my orbit a little bit further out. There are different ways that I could handle this in order to make that application a little bit better. Again, I fly these suboptimally to show you that if you fly it better than I do, you can do even better than I do. That accounts for the fact that I'm at maximum skills, right? I'm at maximum skills in game, but not maximum skills as a pilot. So if you've got lower in-game skills than me, but better piloting skills, well, it's going to work out very similar, right? Anyway, we're finally beginning to chunk through that Wakeful Sentry tower. You can see the Awakened Upholders are now actually in range to be hitting me with both their webs and their neutralizers. 4 neutralizers is 24 gigajoules per second of neutralization. That is enough to make me Capacitor unstable. But for such a short period of time, it shouldn't matter too much. I'm going to send my drones against that first Awakened Upholder. I've swapped to Barrage now, which is giving me significantly better range. I should now hopefully be able to hit that Awakened Upholder and pull it down fairly quickly. Yes, I'm cap unstable right now, but I'm going to have a few minutes of capacitor stability, and if I do worry that my capacitor's getting a bit low, well, I could just turn off that additional armor repairer. That's why I have one armor repairer mapped to my standard keybinds, in this case F3, whereas the other one is always running, and so it's on my secondary line. It just means I can press F3 to turn the armor repairer on and off as required. As you can see, we are hitting that Awakened Upholder, and even with all of my modules running, even with all 4 neutralizers on me, we're not losing capacitor too quickly, and we should be absolutely fine in handling this. And just jumping a little bit further ahead in the wave, you can see that, yeah, absolutely that was the case. I've taken out 2 of those Awakened Upholders, I've got everything running, and my capacitor is actually now recharging underneath all of those modules still being active. Not an issue at all for the first wave. The amount of neutralizers that are hitting you, as long as you can pull one of them down in fairly reasonable time, you don't even really need to turn your armor repairer off. You might decide to for a couple of cycles just to help your capacitor, but it's not 100% necessary as long as you are pulling down one of those Awakened Upholders fairly quickly. Wave 2 of the Aru's, super easy, just takes a little bit of time to chunk through the Sleepless Defender that you're left with at the end of it. Kill the frigates first, go for the battleship at the end. Just get a nice tight orbit around the battleship, and you'll find it just can't hit you or damage you, and you can pull the frigates apart at your leisure. Third wave is a little bit more annoying because you've got 2 Awakened Preservers that like to remote rep each other. If you go for the battleship at this point, it's got 2 remote reps on it, you're not going to break through it. Go for one of the Awakened Preservers first of all, because you really need to pull that thing down quickly. You can see I've swapped to Hail, and I'm trying to get a nice close orbit on that in order to just kill it as quickly as I can. Obviously, keep an eye on where the battleship is and that it's not going to be hitting you too hard. But as you can see at the moment, I'm actually running just one armor repairer, and I'm not taking enough damage to really worry about it. I want to get that Awakened Preserver down as quickly as possible, so that way it's the second Awakened Preserver has nothing repping it. Right now, if I go for the battleship, there are 2 preservers that can remote rep it. If I go for a Awakened Preserver, the other one is going to be repping it. There's nothing we can do about that. We just have to have enough DPS to be able to break that tank, which this ship absolutely has. It's just a case of getting into range, getting that damage onto it. And well, as you can see, we're beginning to break through that tank now, slowly and steadily. That first Awakened Preserver, oh my goodness, it takes a lot longer than you'd expect to kill for a cruiser because it's a constant 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing. If you're watching its health track in the top right there, you'll see that it comes and goes, comes and goes, comes and goes. They're also really annoying ships in that they do kind of try to keep range from you. Not fun. Not fun at all. We do have a neutralizer from the Sleepless Upholder, of course. It's a 12 gigajoules per second one. Not an issue. And because that preserver is keeping range, I'm just going to swap back to Barrage and try and chunk through it with that. It's going to take a while, but I promise you, we will get there. First Awakened Preserver is about to go down at long last. Good lord, that thing was a mission and a half to kill. Second one is going to be much easier because there is nothing remote repping this one. Then I can go for the Sleepless Upholder. You can see my tank is holding absolutely fine. Does take a bit of a time to get through this wave because of that issue with the Awakened Preservers, but you can clear it. You can absolutely clear it. And at this point in the video as well, I need to apologize and say that I did record me doing an Outpost Frontier Stronghold in this Stabber Fleet issue. Unfortunately, because I've got so much footage sitting on my computer at the moment, I've been running a board gaming channel recently as well, that I do hope a lot of you will come along and check out. That's at Board Game Buccaneer on YouTube. There's a link at the top of my YouTube page as well if you're interested in learning more about the board games that I play. But there's a lot of footage sitting on my computer where I've been recording a load of that as well. Essentially, halfway through recording the Outpost Frontier Stronghold, basically halfway through the final wave, I ran out of hard disk space, and OBS does this thing where if it runs out of space partway through a recording, you lose the whole recording, not just the bit that it ran out of space for. It doesn't stop and save. No, it just cancels the whole thing. So I don't have footage of the Outpost Frontier Stronghold is my point, but yes, as long as you're careful, as long as Wave 2 is spent basically moving away from the Wave 3 spawn-in point so that you can deal with the 4 frigates before having to go back and take out the battleships, as long as you keep up your angular velocity and momentum against those battleships, you will be absolutely fine. It's not as difficult as it sounds. If you're interested in seeing what I mean about that, watch my video on the Vexor Navy issue and how that run the Outpost Frontier Stronghold. The exact same approach is what we're going to be using with the Stabber Fleet issue, and it absolutely works. Obviously, Fortification Frontier Strongholds are your best ISK per hour speed. When it comes to running these sites, they're the ones you want to run as a priority. But if other people in your corporation are running those sites, or if there's just not one available in the wormhole you're ratting, well, you can clear all 3 of the other sites as well. There are going to be some folks who ask, what about the unsecured and forgotten sites? No, do not bother. They are not good ISK per hour, and they are incredibly hard to survive. Some of them it can do, but it's incredibly touch and go, even with the skills that I have. Do not bother. Don't go for the unsecured or the forgotten sites. They are not good in a Stabber Fleet issue. You need something like a Vagabond to make those work. But hey, this is a great training point, middle ground for going up to the Vagabond, right? As for, can I clear out gas sites for my corporation with this? Yeah, absolutely. This will do all of the gas sites and get rid of the rats in those quite comfortably as well. It will do well against those, just worth noting. Anyway, folks, that's everything here for the Stabber Fleet issue. I have rambled on long about this enough. It's a great ship. It's a cheap ship. It's a Minmatar ship. What's not to love? If you're looking to get into C3 ratting, do consider coming joining us in Catskull. We are basically wormholers for the most part at this point. We have a lot of fun ratting this kind of stuff. You can see I'm D-scanning, and I'm not worried about spotting certain ships on D-scan because I know they are friendly and I've got people watching my back out there, which makes it much safer and much more sociable when I'm ratting in wormholes. And we would love for you to come and join us. Join the Catskull Discord, linked in the description of this video. Make sure you go to the role select, check the EVE Online role so that you get those channels, and then make a ticket to apply for the corporation. Be aware it can take a couple of days to process because we've got a small team of volunteers who work really hard processing all of those applications. Big shout out and thank you to those guys if you're at this point in the video. Anyway, thanks for watching this one right the way through to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!